Hey guys, Michael here with Hello Cupcake, it's me, and this is part 2 to the Q&A video, the one that was like 12 million years long. The last part 1 video, I'm sorry about that. So, in this part of the video, I'm going to talk about the jobs that I've had and my education and stuff like that. So, in the last video, the question was, tell us about your biological mother. And so that's what that whole video was, and kind of like opened a whole like word diarrhea of what was going on about that. So in this video, we're going to start off with just my work history. So the very first job I ever had was working for my biological mother in her movie store. I was in charge of rewinding the VCR tapes and restocking them, except for I couldn't restock or rewind the X-rated pornographic tapes. And so, yeah, so there was that, and, so that was the very first job I ever had, and then, but the very first actual physical retail job that I had was, what do you call it? Oh, I worked for a pet store. And that was my first time ever, like, signing a W-2 form and whatever else. And I really, really wanted this job because having grown up with her as, like, a Dr. Dolittle type situation, it was, like, just really kind of, that's what I want to do. I want to work with animals. And so I was very honest with these people because it was my first job, and I told them, I said, I am not good with mathematics, so I do not believe that I would be a good cashier. Please do not put me on cashiering. I will clean out the animal cages and I will do everything else, but please don't put me on cashiering. Where'd they put me? Cashiering. For those of you who don't know, I'm dyslexic and I have dyscalculia, which means that I transpose both letters and numbers. And because of my grade school education and it being the early 80s and 90s, they didn't know a lot about dyslexia and dyscalculia and stuff like that. So I was actually in special ed remedial courses. And those special ed remedial courses really just kind of taught you the basics: addition, subtraction, some multiplication, and some division. Multiplication and division never stuck with me. I could do fractions, basic fractions. I could do addition and subtraction. Anything else above and beyond that, I needed a calculator for. So I also didn't know how to count back money. So if somebody gave me a 20 and their bill was $5 or whatever, I'd have to go, okay, here's 5, 15, 20, 1, 2, and, or, 5, 10, and 1, 2, 3 makes $20 or whatever else. And I could count out the change, like a nickel and a quarter, that makes 30 cents, and so on and so forth. But it was just like the counting back of money. So whatever the register would say, like change due $13.45, okay, here's a 10, 3 ones, and 45 cents. There you go. I could do that, but I just couldn't get the whole concept of counting money back. Then they also assigned me janitorial duties of walking around and cleaning down the tanks and mopping, sweeping, mopping, dusting, and spraying down the glass and wiping off fingerprints. And then I was also in charge of small animals and reptiles, accessories. So I stayed with that job for about 6 months um, before I got fired from it, and they just said that my performance was subpar, and that I had been complained about by customers and this, that, and the other thing. And I said, well, you know what? This is my first job that I've ever had. I'm sorry. I told you my strengths. I told you my weaknesses. You didn't put me where my strengths were going to be utilized. And you threw all these massive tasks at me that I told you I wasn't able to do. So, fine. Um, After that, I started going to college, and I never planned on going to college. Like, I hated high school, and I dreaded every day I had to get up and go to school because I was so horrendously bullied by people. And I thought, I hate high school so damn much. Why would I willingly go to college where I have to pay a tuition to get in and all this other stuff? But it was actually my sister who talked me into going to college and doing all that stuff. And so me being the networking person that I am, I got in there and I made friends with everyone in all the different departments. In the ASB office, I made friends with the cafeteria workers. I made friends with the administration staff. I made friends with the admissions. I made friends with the counselors. I made friends with the counselor's office. You name it, I made friends with them, and I had a connection into each of those departments. EOPS, which was a state-funded government program it was like the Equal Opportunity. It stood for like something like Equal Opportunity Support Systems for Students or something like that, but I just remember calling it EOPS. And I also had friends in the financial aid department, and I had friends in the scholarship department and student activities department, because student activities and ASB at the time weren't connected to each other. So when my friend Julie was working, or she was the career counselor, and she helped me get a job on campus. And the first job that I had on campus was working. Was it that one? Yeah, my first job on campus was working at a computer lab, and I was in charge of being in the computer lab as a student assistant, and just basically making sure that people didn't take off with the computers, and help answer their questions, change out printer toner as needed, so on and so forth. So I had that job for 2 semesters, and then I stopped working that job, and then I got a job with the counseling department, and that was like my dream job. Actually, I love doing secretarial work. I love being an office manager. Secretarial work, answering phones, scheduling appointments. That's my life. I know that's weird, but I just love clerical work. So when I was working at the college, in that department, I had to answer phones, schedule appointments. I had to do filing, which was a pain in the ass because my dyslexia was really bad, and it took me like 10 minutes to file 4 or 5 folders, so I always put it off toward the end of my shift. And then after I stopped working in the counseling department, I then got elected to be a school senator with the ASB or the student body, and then as a senator on the student body board, I was in charge of me and me and a girlfriend of mine, we were in charge of computer technology and operations. So we went through and we got Gateway to sponsor us and gave us a whole new computer system. Um, it let's see, we got 6 brand new computers that were top of the line at the time, because back in the like early 2000s, Gateway was like Apple and iPad and all that other stuff. It was just like a high quality machine. But so we were in charge of that, and we also worked to make sure that the money that the students paid for their ID cards was allocated properly. We also kind of had to govern the rest of the students, like their clubs and things like that. So like chess club and all that other stuff. We had to govern those and make sure that their finances were being properly spent, and we had to do purchase orders and all this other stuff, and like reallocating money. Like if the computer club came to us and said, hey, we need $15,000 to do XYZ, then it was up to me and my friend Inza to look over their purchase order request, and to then take that out, or take that over, and then contact the different computer companies, which at the time was Dell, HP, Compaq, Gateway, and there was one other one I can't remember that was like all major competitors. And this is before HP bought out Compaq and that other company that they bought out. So anyways, we went through and we redid their purchase order request, and then we put it through, got computers and so on and so forth. Then we went to after that, I became the president of one of the clubs there on campus, and with that came a small stipend that I was allowed to utilize. And I was also a member of the Senate at that time too. I just happened to take over this club because the current president graduated, and the club was going to have to disband if they didn't have someone new come in. So I took it over, and I got a small stipend from that. And with that club, I brought on free mobile AIDS testing, like STD, AIDS, HIV testing. And we took on the campaign of Safe Sex for Safe Me, and that was like our campaign. Thinking back on it, we should have probably called it something a little bit different, but me and several other people from the club, we used to walk around with these huge tote bags filled to the brim with condoms and dental dams and literature and all this other stuff, and Planned Parenthood information, what to do if you think that you may have an STD, where the local health department was, what the prices were for this, that, and the other thing. If you were diagnosed with AIDS or HIV, where you needed to go to talk to people, where to get grief counseling for that whole process, and so on and so forth. And so that was a lot of fun. After I left school, I then went to work for Walmart, and Walmart was one of the best jobs I ever had. Like, I absolutely loved that job. Right off the bat, I was given full medical, full dental, full vision. My 401k was matched dollar for dollar, and I had $300 or $400 a pay period taken out of my check and put into my 401k. I got a free Sam's Club card. I got $100,000 in life insurance. So $50,000 went to my went to my girlfriend at the time, and then $25,000 went to my sister. $25,000 went to my niece. I had full medical coverage for my spouse, partner, or significant other, and so I put my girlfriend on my medical, even though she already had her own medical. It was just like one of those, let's just double it up anyways. It's part of my perks. I was working in the camera department, and this is back before our digital cameras really took the market. We still had the traditional Kodak type cameras that took film and stuff like that. So um, when I was working for Walmart, uh, it took place during the like during the spring, and by June, when everyone starts graduating, we got a huge influx of people coming in. And I was working in Palm Springs at the time, Palm Springs, California, and our our influx of just senior citizens coming in, trying to figure out, okay, well, we want a new camera because our grandson is graduating, our grandchildren are graduating, whatever, blah blah. How does this work? And having a soft spot and affinity for senior citizens and the elderly, and having been brought up by my grandmother and helping with my grandfather, who was an invalid for 27 years because he fell off the scaffolding while working on, I think it was the 405 freeway in Los Angeles. When they were just putting it in, he fell off like the second story scaffolding and broke his back, and was put on disability afterwards. And like the steel union workers basically took care of him and my grandmother for the rest of their lives. Um, are up until my grandmother, are like up until the when my grandfather passed away, and then like my grandmother remarried a year later, I think, is when she no longer received his benefits. But anyways, another story, and I don't really have all the details on that. So, but any, so yeah, just where was I? Went from Walmart to, oh, so I'm sorry, train of thought here. So we had an influx of senior citizens coming in, and they didn't understand digital camera technology, and they're like, well, where do we buy where where do we put the film? And I showed them SD cards, because that's when SD cards were first coming out on the market. Before then, there was the big, thick, square, compact flash, or the like floppy drive flash cards. I can't even remember what those were called, like MMF or something like that. Anyways, so I showed them all that, and I upsold brands that they knew and that they understood, like Kodak, and well, basically that was it. Is just I sold a lot of Kodak cameras to them, which at the time wasn't the highest priced cameras. It was like that low to mid-range price. I mainly sold it because of the ease of use, and I had a Kodak digital camera of my own at the time. And some of these elderly people who were coming in didn't want to use Toshiba and stuff like that. They wanted like a good American brand that they knew and that they trusted. Sorry, my camera keeps like losing focus on me. So I actually increased the sales of that department by 22%, I think my manager said. And during that time period, I also learned how to process photos, because we had to do that all by hand. People would drop off their film rolls, then we would process that out, and then an hour later or a day later, they would come back and pick up their pictures and stuff. And some of the shit that people brought to Walmart, man, good lord, we had a big thick binder like that big of just pornography, like people taking naked pictures of themselves or their girlfriends or miscellaneous acts, and we kept all that. I don't remember why we kept it, but it was just one of those things that we kept, and we weren't allowed to give that to the people, and so they would be all like, "Hey, we're missing pictures." And I'm like, "Yeah, we know you're missing pictures, sinner." So that yeah. So guys, don't process your pictures. If you're gonna take pictures, print them out at home. Okay? No one wants to see it. So that was a lot of interesting fun. I ended up getting let go from Walmart because of a Spanish-speaking employee. Now, there were actually several different reasons that I got let go, but the Spanish-speaking employee was one of them, and the checker was the other one. So, in the Walmart handbook, and this is like circa 2000, 2003, at that time in the Walmart handbook, it stated that you have to be extremely fluent in English in order to work on the floor. when you would have to restock, there was a way that you were supposed to build out your basket. The products would be in the basket itself, trash on the bottom, because they didn't want the products to fall off and get damaged or whatever, so they wanted it inside the thing. Me, my girlfriend, and my roommates at the time decided that we were going to go to Walmart and we were going to go cash my check and do some grocery shopping and stuff that we needed to do for the house. So we take off, and I tell the roommates, I'm like, go do what you gotta do, and just get me a few extra things, or get me these few things. I'm gonna head back to electronics and over to the automotive, and meet me there. So we started like buying stuff, and we didn't have a basket, and when we were in the automotive area, there was a Hispanic man there, and he was stocking or whatever, and he had all of his trash on the bottom, and the top of the cart was completely emptied. And I asked him, I said, "Are you still using this cart?" He's like, "No, you can have it." I'm like, "Okay, cool. I'll throw the trash away for you or whatever, but I just need the cart." He's like, "Oh, okay, go ahead and take it. I'll go get another one. I have another one in the stock room." Cool. So we meet back up with my roommates and everything. We go to check out, and my roommates take the cart and they go to push it out into the cart bay, and all the bells and whistles start going off that someone was trying to steal something. And I ran over there. I'm like, "What's going on?" They're like, "Yeah, they were trying to steal these battery terminal cable things." And I'm like, No. And I explained the situation about how I got the cart and I thought it was trash and this, that, and the other thing. It was those little like green and red felt things that go over the battery terminals to let you know which one's positive and which one's negative. And I was like, what the hell do we need with an entire pallet, or not a pallet, but an entire box of felt circles, really? And so we all laughed it off and like went on about our business. So I had the next day off, and I came in on that Saturday. So it went Thursday is when this happened. Friday I had off. Saturday I came in. And I worked almost my entire shift, and then I get a call saying that I needed to come see the store manager in the back room. And that whole day things just kind of seemed off, and I'm like, what the hell's going on? So I went and met up with the store manager, and he accused me of shoplifting, and I said, "That's not what happened." I explained the whole thing. I told him, "If you review the videos, you're going to see this happened at this time, this is where we were, so on and so forth." So he said, well, I'm going to have to let you go. Um, sorry, whatever else. I'll review the videos and then I'll call you back. So I was sent home. I wasn't officially terminated I was pending termination at that point. I wasn't officially terminated. He called me back a few days later and he said, I reviewed the videos and I saw what you said was true, but I have to go through with your termination, and if I reverse it now, I will lose face with... And I said, well, then move me to a different Walmart, because there was like 6 in the area. I'm like, just move me to a different location. Well, no, we can't do that, but what we'll do is, if you go ahead and list us, we're going to say that we had to let you go due to family circumstances or something like that. I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. Then I applied for several jobs during that time period. One of them was for a like a GNC type situation, and they wanted me. They liked me. They liked everything I had to say on the phone. They called me in for an interview and saw that I was a larger person, and they said, you are perfect except for the fact that you're fat. And just those words, you are perfect except for the fact that you are fat. And what would it look like having a fat guy sell our diet supplements and stuff like that? They said, now if you are willing to lose weight and use our products, we will use you as the poster child so people could see the before and after. And I was like, yeah, no, fuck you, because of reasons. I'm just like, I'm not comfortable with being your guinea pig and your poster child and like, oh, come see Bobo the fat clown or whatever. No, I was just like, no, I'm done. Thank you, but no thank you. And so I ended up getting a job at Bath and Body Works. And it was a holiday seasonal job. And during that time period, I also got a job with Disney and was working 3 other jobs and one like Avon type job, which was selling sex toys. And that was an interesting one altogether. So I learned... Focus! There you go. I learned very quickly that I like to be a Black Friday shopper, not working as a Black Friday shopper, because dealing with the Bath and Body Works bullshit, which I love their products, but if you can, don't ever work for them unless you like to seriously bust your ass and tear down the store every 2 or 3 weeks. Like, every time that there is a new scent launch, or there's a changing of the season, or upper management like loses an eyelash, you have to tear down the entire store and build it back up, and it sucks. In the time that I worked there, from September to December, we tore the store down 13 times. 13 times. And each time that we did it, we would have to come in at like 7:30, 8 o'clock, work the last part of our shift, that last part of shifts, and then close the store down. And then we would have to then stay there from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. rebuilding the store. And then have to come back in for second shift the next day. So that was a whole lot of fuck you. And then the same thing when I was working for the Disney store also. It was around the holidays too, so we had just tons of people coming through. And basically I would get off at Bath and Body Works, go upstairs to the food court, get something to eat, go downstairs, work an hour or 2 at Disney, go home, and then do the sex toy party. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. the company that I was working for was kind of like an Avon, but for sex toys, and it was, I think they call them passion parties now, but back then it was called Just for Fun. And so, me and my roommate, we would drive all over Hell and High Water to have these dildo parties, basically. And she would talk about the feminine products, like there was this battery operated tongue and dildos and stuff like that. And I would talk about the masturbation sleeves and this, that, and the other thing. And so that was a very interesting job that really didn't pan out that well. We did it for about 4 months before we both said, yeah, this is more hassle than it's worth. Like, it cost $500 and something to buy the kit, so that was like $250 from her, $250 from me, and we just didn't really make that much money back because, you know, it's a bunch of retired people, and, you know, grandma and grandpa aren't talking about trying to get their fuck on. And Viagra wasn't as popular as it is now. Anyways, moving on from there, I I started working. Oh, I put in an application after I left Pizza Hut, and I put in applications all over the place. And one was for Staples, and then another one was for this place called Leslie's Pool Supply. And I got hired on at Staples and was technically an employee of Staples for 2 hours and 45 minutes when I got the phone call from Leslie's offering me the job. And the job was paying $3 or $4 more an hour than what Staples was going to be paying me, and had bigger growth potential. So I went ahead and I left the job with Staples, and I started working for the pool supply store. And I was lead sale associate and opener. So I was given a set of keys, a set of combinations to the safe, and a set of security codes to put into the security systems. And so on one day I would work at this store, the next day I would work at this store, the next day I'd work at this store over here, the next day I'd work here. So I was constantly zigzagging all through the Coachella Valley. My primary store was La Quinta, and at that time I was living up in Yucca Valley, and so from my front door in Yucca Valley to La Quinta was 75 or 85 miles one direction. And at the time I had a 1985 Lincoln Mercury Cougar, big old land yacht of a car. Oh shit, I forgot all about that one. So, rewinding to the college thing. After I stopped working at the college, I became a lunch lady for a childcare center. That was in 2002. Yeah, 2002. And then our house burnt down in 2003. I left that job, and then I started doing the Walmart and everything else. Okay, so now we're up to Staples and the pool store. Okay, sorry about that. So, working at the pool store, I zigzagged all over the Coachella Valley, and then eventually I became like a pseudo store manager. And I was given my own store, and I had to maintain that store, and I was not allowed to have anyone else working with me. Even though the Palm Springs store had 2 high school students, I was never allowed to have anyone work with me for whatever damn reason. Um, Even on Fridays when we would get our big truck shipments, I was expected to unload the truck, bring it into the warehouse, set it up, enter it into the computers, and maintain day-to-day functionality of the store. So I um, I did that for a long time, and then the store manager training test came up, and begrudgingly, my district manager allowed me to take that training course and failed me because I missed 3 questions on the damn test. And I was just like, seriously? 3 fucking questions, and you're going to deny me managerial whatever. I'm like, okay, whatever. So I just stayed lead sell associate and was working that store like I was the store manager, and I referred to myself as the store manager and so on and so forth. And he then they hired this arrogant little asshole off the streets, paid him 15 fucking dollars an hour, where I was just barely making 10. Now this is back in 2004, 2005, when that kind of money for the position that we had was unheard of. But they were going to be giving this guy like $14 or $15 an hour, and I was busting my ass to just barely make $10.25 an hour. And I was the only one out of all 4 of the stores that had combinations, keys, what have you, to all of those stores. The district manager didn't even have keys to all the stores, let alone safe combinations or deactivation codes. So that pissed me off. And I finally got to the point where I was just like, I'm done with this. I am absolutely done with it. The final straw was, it was Thanksgiving weekend. It was like a day before Thanksgiving, and I started feeling like shit. And I told my manager, he was my overseeing manager, but he was the store manager of another store. And I told him, I said, look, I don't think I'm going to be able to come in because I'm not feeling well. He's like, well, you don't have any choice. You need to, because I'm going to be in Louisiana. And yeah. And I said, that's not my problem. If I'm not feeling well, I'm not coming to work. And so Thanksgiving came, and I started developing a really high fever. It was like 104.5 or some shit like that. And I called my manager up. I said, listen, I'm running a fever of 104.5. I'm throwing up. I can't really move. I'm dizzy. I'm lightheaded. I'm weak. So on and so forth. He said, well, you need to be at work tomorrow or don't bother coming back. I'm out of state and there's nothing I can do. I said, well, you need to find somebody, but I'm going to the ER now, and I'm going to get admitted or what have you. So I went to the ER, and the doctor didn't want me to check out. He was very adamant about me checking out and me not feeling well and all this other stuff. And I took that stack of paperwork with me to work the next day, and all I wore to work that day was my work shirt and a pair of sweatpants. They were like pajama sweatpants, and just some regular shoes. I had my hair pulled back like I normally do, and I felt like 12 miles of rough road. So at 8 o'clock, I started faxing over the entire stack of forms to my district manager, and I faxed over the letter from the doctor at the ER saying that he wanted to admit me and that I should not be at work and blah blah blah. So finally get all that to go through, and my district manager calls me up about 15 minutes afterwards. What the hell are you doing at work? I said, I was told that if I don't come to work, that I was going to be in trouble, this, that, and the other thing, blah, blah, blah. He's like, well, can you stay there until 2? This was, at the time, 8:45. I said, my fever as of right now is 103.9. I don't know how long I'm going to stay here. I'm going to try to stay here as long as I can, but I'm thinking I'm going to be gone by 11:30, 12 o'clock. So, he finally found somebody to come and cover my shift, and that person was not happy about it, and I gave no fucks. And so I took off, I went home, and I took 2 days off work. And when I came back, they were treating me like shit at that point. My manager was pissed off, my district manager was pissed off, the guy who had come in and cover me was pissed off, like the whole 9 yards. And I was just like, you know what, fuck all of you. I was not feeling good. I told you 2 days before Thanksgiving that I was not feeling well. So, no, you are not going to be pissed off at me. And so that night, I went home and I was talking to my parents, because I was living with them at the time. And I just told them, I said, I'm going to hold on as long as I can, but, you know, I'm probably going to be quitting that job. And so I quit the next day because it was just a bunch of asinine bullshit. They started, like, everyone was hounding me about something. And I called up the Palm Springs store. I said, you have 10 minutes to get over here, or I'm walking and I'm leaving the door open with cash registers open and the safe open. That 10 minutes came. I opened up the safe. I opened up the cash register. I left my keys in the door. And I took a small bag of money and went up to the La Quinta... Or no, I didn't leave my keys in the door, but I left the door unlocked. And I went up to the Palm Springs store, and the manager there was talking on the phone, and he kept, like, doing this bit. I was like, get the fuck off the phone. Now. Call them back or whatever you gotta do. And he's like, what? I said, I'm done. I'm done with your abuse. I am done with this bullshit. Take this job and shove it. I was like, here is some of the money. The rest of the money is in the till. I left the till open. I left the door unlocked. And I left the safe unlocked. I said, here's my keys. Fuck you very much. Well, you can't do that. You need to lock it up. I said, no, I don't. You guys don't care about me. I don't give a fuck about you and your situations. So, bye-bye. And, I left. And within a week, I had a job as a caregiver. And I started working in Hollywood. And I was a caregiver for a gentleman there in Laurel Hills, just on the other side of Hollywood. And I was there for 4 months. And it was the most disgusting situation I had ever dealt with. The person that I was relieving had been living there for several years, and every time I would come in, there would be like empty condoms and lube and all this other shit laying around, and I'm like, are you fucking the client? Like, and I felt bad for the client because they were this like world traveler, and pictures of them on Machu Picchu and shaking hands with the president and doing this, that, and the other thing. And they were this withered up skeleton of a person laying in a bed with a dirty ass nightgown on, underwear that were 40 sizes too big. They used to fit the person when they were larger, but they had lost so much weight and just dwindled down that they had to safety pin them, which would then come undone, and then they would bleed all over the sheets, and there was like that much dirt in their bathtub. And I was told by the company, you cannot force your client to take a shower or bathe them. And I was like, well, that is basic human necessity, and ugh, yeah, you should be able to do so. So, anyways, I ended up leaving that within like 3 or 4 months of being at that job. And then I got a job with doing background verifications where people would, whenever you submitted your job application, it would come to our company, and then um, the the company would break it up into departments. And so for verifications, it would come across my desk and say Joe Smith said that they worked for this place, and this place, had this kind of education, held this kind of license and degree, and blah, blah, blah. So it was my job to call references and previous employment and get that information and fact checked it, and then put it into a database and then send that off every day. So every day we would get a cold call sheet of like that day's clients and whatever, and if we didn't get a response from um, people from the day before, that would also be on our spreadsheet, and we had to go through and start from top to bottom and do the verification, background specialist stuff, and all that other hoopla. And I stayed with that job for about 5 months, and I ended up quitting that job because I was driving 60 miles, my car was starting to break down, and I was only getting paid like $100 a week to work there through this temp agency that I got hired on with. And so it was like $100 or $200 a week. It was something stupid and minuscule. And by the time I factored in gas and just daily living expenses, it wasn't even worth it to go to it. So I left there, and I tried to go back to school, and I made it through another semester of college, and almost finished out one of the degrees I was going for. I'm like 17 units away from 5 different degrees, and the degrees range from desktop publishing, which was like a big thing back then, which was like spreadsheet data processing and all that other stuff, digital or photography, early childhood education, high school English teacher, religious studies, and there was one more. I can't remember what it is now. But so like I'm literally between 17 and 20 units from finishing like 7 different degrees. So I got one more thing done out of that. Then I started working a work from home phone consultation job, and I did that for probably 6 years. And then during that time period, I started working with I started doing repos and skip tracing and stuff like that. And so every day at like 3:30, 4 o'clock, a fax would come in, and I would have to plan out the route of where we were going to go to look for these cars. I had to pull up the information on the people, their names, numbers, addresses, aliases, so on and so forth. And then we would go get those cars and then take them back to a car lot or stash them at like a Walmart or something, and then take them back to the impound lot where we would turn everything in and then get bounties. We got like $200 or $300 per car, and had a whole bunch of wild times with that. People chasing us with guns and knives, taking baseball bats to us, threatening our lives because they missed a payment, begging and pleading, hey, I promise I'm going to get the payment in there tomorrow. Please don't take my car. Please don't take my car. And basically, if we were called out, you had your chance to do all that. And once we hooked it up to our tow truck, that was it. There was no getting it back. And so one lady jumped into the car, and my partner she squeezed herself in between my partner and the car seat and was screaming that he was crushing her and all this other stuff, and tried to sue us for manhandling. And another guy, he tried to drive his truck or his car off of the tow truck, and he went back up over the tow truck and got wedged in this parking structure, and ended up causing a shit ton of damage to his car and to the parking structure. And our company ended up suing that person for damages done to the tow truck, and I think they ended up losing their house or something because of it, and because of HOA fees and all that other shit, because he was out there just being a complete douche nugget. And so I went from doing the repo and the phone thing full time to just going back and doing only phone and virtual assisting type jobs. Then in 2007, in 2006, I started working for a tribal daycare, and I was doing the lunch lady type thing again, and I was in charge of cleaning up the kitchen, the dining room, making breakfast, lunch, and a snack, and going and doing shopping weekly, as well as putting in purchase order requests for the entire school. So that was a lot of fun. And the boss that I had there, she was really just kind of anti-man type situation, and really tried to come down on me multiple times. And at the time, my sister and I, we were working there together, and my sister's actually the one who got me the job there. And she was in the hallway listening to the manager, or the daycare supervisor, whatever the hell you want to call her, just berate me and talk shit about me and blah 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 blah, and just going off on me and telling me how worthless I am and all this other stuff. And Tanya comes walking in, and she's like, "Oh, hi, hon. I was just telling your brother how amazing he is and what kind of a good job he's doing." And blah, blah, blah. She's like, "Oh yeah, he's a pretty great guy, blah 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 blah." And she leaves, and I look at my sister, and I'm like, "That's what I've been telling you about for like the last couple of months." She's like, "I am so sorry. I didn't believe you. I thought you were just making it all up or whatever else." And this is right before I went into the hospital for becoming diabetic, and I was like extremely sick during that time period. So I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna like try to get through the rest of this. And I wasn't going to quit, but I was forced to quit because my condition was getting worse, and I was then hospitalized, and I was in the hospital for about 6 weeks. And then after I got out of the hospital and my health was on the mend, I made the choice to move up here to Washington. And when I got here to Washington, I took a job with Goodwill, which I fucking hate Goodwill and will never, ever donate or work for them ever again. They are trash. They are a non-profit for-profit company, which I don't even understand how that works. We were told to lie to the media and to anyone who asks, saying that any computer that was brought in to us, that it was taken to a recycling plant over at Mount Vernon and stripped down and recycled, when in all actuality, that's not what happened. They took those computers, they put them in a box, and shipped them overseas without erasing any of the data on there. So anyone who... And that's pretty much what they do now. Yeah, that's pretty much what they do now. Is any kind of electronics or whatever that you donate goes into a box and goes overseas, and that's what happens. We weren't allowed to keep Levi's or any of that other stuff, and all of that got packed up and sent overseas. So yeah, and then that's basically when I became disabled. Is um, 2009, 2010, and that's when everything just kind of went downhill with my mental health, my physical health, and everything else. And that's the story of how I came to be to this point in time now. So, um, thank you guys for watching this long into